All right. Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at memory, specifically how to naturally improve both our retention and recall. We got a ton of research to dig through here. So much interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We really are looking at a blueprint for a sharper mind. This isn't some esoteric, mystical, brain training. It's really straightforward stuff that science supports pretty strongly. We're going to be taking a look at how everything from what you eat to how you sleep can affect your memory.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be looking at brain-boosting foods, how staying active can help you remember things better, how important sleep is, and then the impact of things like mindfulness, how a good mental workout can keep your brain firing on all cylinders. And then we'll even look at specific techniques you can use to just more easily store and recall information. And, of course, the impact of stress and even our social lives on how our memory functions. Because, memory is more than just about acing that next pop quiz, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's the foundation of everything,
Yeah.
Learning, connecting, just navigating the world around us really depends on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess without further ado, shall we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. So why don't we start with one of the more basic aspects here, which is diet. How does what we eat affect our ability to remember things?
Well, yeah, there's actually a really strong link between what we eat and how our brains function. I mean, obviously in general, but when we're talking specifically about memory, there are definitely certain foods that can either help or, hinder.
Okay, so let's start breaking that down a bit. I know our sources point to like a few key categories here that are particularly good for the brain. And first up is fatty fish, right? Things like salmon, trout, sardines. What makes those so beneficial for our memory?
Well, a lot of it comes down to omega-3 fatty acids. And, think of it this way. Your brain cells, they're like tiny little messengers constantly sending signals back and forth. And the omega-3s, specifically DHA, which is really highly concentrated in the brain, they help to kind of build these smooth, efficient pathways for those messages to travel. It's like, upgrading from dial-up to high-speed internet.
Okay.
So the faster and clearer that communication is happening, the faster and more accurately you're going to be able to recall information. It's not just about like a general benefit. It's really about making those brain cell connections work as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy, right? It's about optimizing that whole communication network.
Right.
So what about other foods? What other allies do we have in this fight for a better memory?
Well, next up, we've got leafy green vegetables.
Okay.
So think spinach, kale, broccoli. And they're packed full of antioxidants and vitamin K. Now, what's interesting here is how they work. Antioxidants, they help protect your brain from what's called oxidative stress. You can kind of think of it like rust forming on metal.
Oh, okay.
These unstable molecules called free radicals, they can damage your brain cells in a similar way. And antioxidants, they neutralize those free radicals, prevent that damage from happening. And then vitamin K, on the other hand, has been linked to enhancing cognitive function.
Yeah.
And it might actually play a role in strengthening those neural pathways we were just talking about.
So it's like a double whammy.
Exactly.
Parents have been telling us to eat our greens forever. They were actually giving us good memory advice.
Yeah, they were wiser than we knew.
All right, so we've got our fish, we've got our greens. What about berries? Blueberries, strawberries, they always seem to get a lot of attention when we talk about health benefits in general.
Right.
But are they particularly good for the brain too?
Yeah, and for good reason. They're powerhouses of antioxidants. But specifically, they've got compounds that can actually cross what's called the blood-brain barrier. So what that means is they can directly target oxidative stress inside the brain itself.
Interesting.
So they're fighting that cellular damage at the source, which is really, it can have a really positive impact on both short-term and long-term memory.
Wow.
And just overall cognitive health.
Okay. So it's like a direct line of defense.
Exactly.
What other food groups should we be piling on our plate here to boost our memory?
Well, nuts and seeds.
Yeah.
Things like walnuts, almonds, flax seeds. They're a great source of healthy fats. Some of them even have those omega-3s we were talking about. Plus, they have vitamin E, which is another type of antioxidant. So it's further protecting those brain cells from damage. So, snacking on a handful of nuts isn't just satisfying. It's actually helping keep your brain healthy.
So we're building up our defenses here.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And then finally, and this one might surprise some people, dark chocolate.
Yes.
Is that actually good for our brains?
It Can be, but there's a big caveat.
Yeah.
We're talking about dark chocolate here, not the sugary, milky stuff.
Gotcha.
And even then, it's all about moderation, of course.
Right.
But dark chocolate contains flavonoids. Those are plant-based antioxidants. And it also has a bit of caffeine.
Okay.
So the flavonoids can improve blood flow to the brain, and they might even help promote the growth of new neurons.
Really?
Yeah, which is called neurogenesis.
Wow.
And then the caffeine, it gives you that little bit of a mental boost, helps with alertness and focus. So that can indirectly help memory in the short term, but the real long-term benefits probably come from those flavonoids and their antioxidant properties.
So dark chocolate, potential brain booster.
In moderation.
In moderation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got our grocery list. But, as you're listening to this, think about how many of those foods you actually eat regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Even small increases can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Now, let's move on from what we're putting into our bodies to how we're actually using them.
Yeah.
How does exercise affect our memory?
Oh man, this is where it gets really interesting. Because exercise isn't just about physical fitness. It actually triggers some pretty profound changes in the brain.
Okay.
When we exercise, we increase blood flow to the brain significantly. So all those nutrients and oxygen are just flooding in there, nourishing the brain cells and helping them function better. And that ultimately leads to improvements in all sorts of cognitive abilities, including memory.
So it's like giving your brain a power up.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know our sources break down different types of exercise. Let's start with maybe the more traditional kind, like aerobic exercise, things like walking, running, cycling.
Yeah.
What's their specific benefit for our memory?
Well, aerobic exercise, it's been shown to actually promote the growth of the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that's absolutely crucial for forming new memories. Specifically, those detailed recollections of, events and experiences.
Oh.
There have even been studies showing that people who do regular cardio, they actually have a measurable increase in the volume of their hippocampus, particularly in a part of it called the dentate gyrus. So that daily walk or run, it's not just good for your heart.
Right.
It's actually physically changing the structure of your brain in a way that's good for your memory.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're literally building our brains when we exercise.
Exactly.
All right. So what about strength training then? I know, we often associate that with building muscle mass, but does it have any benefits for our cognitive abilities as well?
Absolutely. Strength training has been linked to improvements in brain plasticity, which is the brain's ability to kind of reorganize itself. It forms new connections throughout life, and that's what allows us to learn and adapt. And research suggests that strength training can actually enhance a lot of different cognitive functions, including attention and processing speed, and those indirectly support better memory encoding and retrieval.
So lifting weights isn't just about physical strength.
Yep.
It's also about building a more adaptable brain.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And then finally, our sources mention, some gentler forms of exercise, things like yoga and Tai Chi.
Yeah.
How do those factor into memory improvement?
Well, yoga and Tai Chi are particularly good for reducing stress and improving focus. And we all know that chronic stress releases cortisol, which we were just talking about, and that can actually impair memory function. So by promoting relaxation and helping us concentrate better, these practices are creating a more optimal internal environment for both learning and recall. When your mind is calm and focused, it's just naturally going to be better at taking in and retaining information.
That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like movement in general is a key component of having a healthy memory.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whether it's an intense workout or something a little more low-key.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're listening to this, think about your own activity levels. Could you maybe add in some more movement throughout your day? Even small bursts can make a difference. Now, after fueling our brains with the right foods and moving our bodies, what's the next crucial element for naturally boosting our memory?
Sleep. It's absolutely essential. You cannot skimp on sleep if you want a good memory.
All right. Why is that?
Well, while we're sleeping, our brains are actually busy at work doing something called memory consolidation. It's basically the process of transferring information from short-term memory to long-term storage. So it's like hitting the save button on everything you learned during the day.
Okay, so consistently not getting enough sleep is like constantly interrupting that saving process.
Exactly. You're not letting your brain do its job properly. And if you don't get enough quality sleep, that whole consolidation process gets disrupted, and it makes it much harder to remember things later on. Our sources consistently recommend aiming for somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night. for most adults.
Okay.
That seems to be the sweet spot for letting this process really work its magic.
So that's the ideal. But, it's not just about quantity.
Right.
The quality of our sleep matters too.
Yeah.
What are some things we can do to improve the quality of our sleep?
Well, consistency is huge. You want to try to stick to a regular sleep-wake schedule as much as possible, even on the weekends.
Yeah.
That helps regulate your body's natural circadian rhythm. You also want to pay attention to your pre-sleep routine. Avoid those screens, phones, tablets, TV, all of that for at least an hour or two before bed.
Mm-hmm.
That blue light they emit, it messes with your melatonin production, which is the hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep.
Oh, yeah. I know that one. It's tough though, right?
It is. It's a challenge, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
And then caffeine is another one to watch out for, especially in the afternoon and evening. Caffeine is a stimulant, and it can stay in your system for hours, making it harder to fall asleep.
Okay. So, regular sleep schedule.
Yeah.
Cut the screens. Watch the caffeine.
Right.
Anything else we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Having a relaxing bedtime ritual can be really helpful. Maybe reading a physical book, taking a warm bath, listening to calming music, anything that kind of signals to your body that it's time to wind down and prepare for sleep.
Okay. So, as you're listening to this, think about your own sleep habits.
Yeah.
Could they be subtly sabotaging your memory?
Oh,
And, even just one small change could make a difference.
absolutely.
All right, let's move on to something that might not seem immediately connected to memory, but actually has a huge impact.
Yeah.
Mindfulness and meditation. How do these practices benefit our memory?
Well, it's fascinating. These practices can actually change the physical structure of our brains. Yeah. Mindfulness and meditation have been shown to reduce cortisol levels, that stress hormone we were just talking about,
Right.
which we know is bad for memory.
Yeah.
But they go even further than that. They can actually enhance brain plasticity, which basically makes your brain more adaptable and strengthens the connections between neurons. And those connections are essential for learning and forming new memories.
Okay, so it's not just about feeling more zen.
No.
There are actual tangible neurological benefits.
Absolutely.
Wow. What about specifically mindfulness meditation?
Yeah.
Does that have a specific impact?
It does. Studies have shown that mindfulness meditation can improve both working memory, which is our ability to kind of hold and manipulate information in our minds, and sustained attention. When you're more present and focused, you're better at encoding new information in the first place, which naturally leads to better recall later on.
So by being more present, we're setting ourselves up for better memory in the future. Interesting. What about breathing exercises? Those simple breathing exercises we often hear about.
Oh, yeah.
How do those play into all of this?
Breathing exercises are surprisingly powerful. They can really increase the flow of oxygen to your brain. And our brains need a lot of oxygen to function properly. They have a high metabolic demand.
Okay.
So by practicing these deep, conscious breathing techniques, we can make sure our brain cells are getting the fuel they need to perform at their best. And that can improve all sorts of cognitive functions, including memory and focus.
That's a really simple yet effective technique that we can do anywhere, really.
Exactly.
And journaling was also mentioned as a mindfulness practice that can help boost memory.
Oh, yeah.
How does writing down our thoughts actually help us remember things?
Well, journaling gives you a chance to actively process and organize your experiences and your thoughts. When you engage with information by writing it down and thinking about it, you create a much stronger memory trace in your brain, so that information is easier to access later on.
So it's like actively pushing it into long-term storage.
Exactly.
All right. So we've talked about mindfulness, meditation, breathing exercises, journaling. They all sound pretty accessible, things that we can weave into our daily routines. As you're listening, maybe think about setting aside just a few minutes each day for one of these practices.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the impact it has on your focus and your memory. Okay, let's move on now to actively engaging and challenging our brains. What role do mental exercises play in keeping our memory sharp?
Think of it like a mental workout. Just like physical exercise strengthens your muscles, engaging your brain with new and stimulating activities helps create new neural connections, and it also reinforces the existing ones.
Okay.
And that's essential for good memory retention and just overall cognitive vitality, really.
So use it or lose it.
Kinda, yeah.
All right. Our sources offer a few good examples. Things like brain games,
Oh, yeah.
Sudoku, crossword puzzles, chess. What's the advantage of doing these kinds of things regularly?
Well, these games often force us to use a bunch of different cognitive skills, like problem solving, logical reasoning, pattern recognition. By challenging ourselves in these ways, we can actually make our brains more flexible and efficient at processing and storing new information.
So it's like a full brain workout.
Yeah, exactly. Hitting all those different cognitive areas.
All right. What about learning entirely new skills then? Like, picking up a musical instrument, trying out painting, learning a new language.
Oh, yeah.
Even coding. Is there a benefit there?
Huge benefit. Learning new skills is one of the best things you can do for your brain. It forces it to work in new ways, which creates new neural pathways and makes it more adaptable.
Okay.
And this not only benefits memory directly, but it also contributes to what's called cognitive reserve. That's basically your brain's ability to withstand damage or the effects of aging. So the more you challenge your brain with new learning, the more resilient it becomes.
That's really cool. So it's not just about mastering the new skill itself, but the whole process of learning that's beneficial. All right. And then finally, our sources talk about reading and storytelling.
Yeah.
How do those simpler activities help strengthen our memory?
Well, reading exposes you to all sorts of new information, new vocabulary, new concepts, and that actively challenges your comprehension and memory skills.
Oh.
And storytelling, whether you're listening to a story or telling one yourself, forces your brain to organize and retain information in a coherent way, and that can be really effective for encoding information into long-term memory.
That makes sense. So it's about staying curious and continuing to learn throughout life.
Definitely.
So as you're listening, think about a skill you've always been curious about. Maybe now is the perfect time to explore it. Your brain will thank you for it. Okay, so we've talked about nourishing our brains, moving our bodies, getting enough sleep, calming our minds, and challenging ourselves mentally. Now let's move on to some more concrete strategies, some specific techniques we can use to enhance our memory. Memory techniques. What are some of the ones that our sources highlight?
All right, so this is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the actual tools we can use to improve our memory. And one that I find really fascinating is the method of loci.
Okay.
It's also known as the memory palace technique.
Right.
And it basically involves associating the information you want to remember with specific locations within a familiar place, like your home. So as you mentally walk through the space, you're placing each piece of information at a different landmark or object.
Okay, so for example, if I had a list of things to do, I could imagine each task in a different room in my house.
Exactly. And the more vivid and unusual, maybe even bizarre you make those mental associations, the easier it will be to remember them.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. What about chunking?
Oh, yeah.
I know that's another technique that's often mentioned.
Chunking is really simple, but it's super effective. It's just about breaking down big pieces of information into smaller, more manageable chunks. Like, think about how we remember phone numbers. We usually break them up into groups of digits. It's much easier to remember a few small pieces than one long string.
That makes a lot of sense. What about mnemonics?
Mnemonics.
We probably all learned a few of those in school.
Oh, yeah. Mnemonics are those memory aids that use acronyms, rhymes, or other catchy associations to help you remember lists of things, like ROYGBIV for the colors of the rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
Or, my very educated mother just served us noodles for the planets.
Right, exactly. Those things stick with you.
Yeah, exactly. And they work because they make the information more memorable and easier to recall.
Okay, so we've got the method of loci, chunking, mnemonics.
Mm-hmm.
What about just good old-fashioned repetition and something called spaced learning?
Right. Well, repetition is key because it strengthens the neural pathways associated with a memory. The more you repeat something, the more ingrained it becomes. But simply cramming information all at once isn't very efficient. That's where spaced learning comes in. This involves reviewing information at increasing intervals. So you might review something shortly after you learn it, then again a day later, 3 days later, a week later, and so on. That spaced repetition really helps solidify those neural connections over time, making those memories more durable.
That's a good strategy. So we've got a whole arsenal of tools here.
Yeah, we do.
The method of loci, chunking, mnemonics, repetition, spaced learning. As you're listening, maybe choose one of these that resonates with you and try it out next time you need to remember something important. See how it works for you. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here, but there are a couple more crucial areas to explore if we want to naturally enhance our memory. Let's talk about stress and anxiety.
All right.
How does managing those affect our cognitive function?
Oh, it's huge. Chronic stress and anxiety can really mess with both forming new memories and recalling old ones. When we're stressed out for long periods of time, our bodies pump out cortisol, that stress hormone we talked about earlier. And that cortisol can actually interfere with the hippocampus, that brain region that's so important for memory.
Okay.
So being constantly stressed is basically throwing a wrench in your brain's memory processes.
Wow. So managing stress is crucial then.
Absolutely. If you want a healthy memory, you've got to manage your stress levels. And luckily, there are a lot of effective ways to do that.
Okay, like what?
Well, deep breathing exercises are a good one. They're simple, but they can really help lower cortisol levels and bring a sense of calm and focus.
Okay.
And then there's spending time in nature, which is something we've all heard about, but it actually has a real impact. Research shows that being in nature can significantly improve mood and boost a bunch of cognitive functions, including attention and memory. It gives our brains a break from the demands of daily life and allows them to relax and recharge, which is beneficial for all sorts of cognitive processes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I always feel more clear-headed after spending time outdoors.
Yeah, exactly.
What about music?
Music is powerful.
Our sources mention that it can be good for memory and concentration.
Yeah, for sure. Music has all these amazing effects on the brain. Certain types of music can be really calming and help reduce stress. It can improve your mood. And sometimes it can even boost focus and concentration. And all of those things can indirectly benefit memory. Plus, music itself can be like a memory trigger, bringing back specific memories and emotions.
Right. I can definitely relate to that. So it seems like our mental and emotional well-being are really intertwined with our cognitive abilities. As you're listening, think about what activities help you manage stress. Prioritizing those could be a big step towards protecting your long-term cognitive health. All right, let's touch on one final aspect here that might not seem immediately obvious when we're talking about memory. Social connections.
Oh, yeah.
How does staying socially engaged benefit our brains?
This is an area of research that's really fascinating to me. Engaging in social activities is so important for both our cognitive and emotional well-being, and both of those are tied to memory function.
Okay.
For example, having conversations and discussions, it actually stimulates critical thinking and memory recall because you're processing information, you're formulating responses, you're remembering details. So those lively debates with friends are actually doing us good. In a way, yeah, they're keeping your brain sharp.
Yeah.
And then team-based activities, games, things like that, they require communication and problem solving, which also engages a lot of different cognitive functions, including memory. And even volunteering and participating in social clubs has been shown to help maintain cognitive function.
Wow.
And it might even lower the risk of age-related cognitive decline.
Really?
Yeah. Social interaction, it gives your brain a workout and it combats feelings of isolation, which can be really bad for brain health.
Okay. So it seems like connecting with others isn't just good for our emotional health, but also for keeping our brains active and healthy.
Exactly.
As you're listening, think about your own social connections. Could you maybe nurture them a bit more? It could be another tool in your arsenal for maintaining a sharp memory. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Why don't we take a moment to summarize the key natural strategies we've talked about for improving our memory?
Okay, so we talked about eating a brain-friendly diet, getting regular physical activity, making sure we're getting enough quality sleep, practicing mindfulness and meditation, engaging in mental exercises using memory techniques, managing stress and anxiety, and nurturing our social connections.
It's really empowering to realize how much control we have over our memory. We don't have to just sit back and accept decline. We can actively work towards having a sharper mind.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway here is that improving your memory is an ongoing process. It's about making those brain-healthy habits a part of your everyday life. You don't have to be perfect in every area. It's more about taking a holistic approach to your cognitive well-being.
That's a great point. So as you go about your day, we'll leave you with this. Think about which of these approaches resonated most with you. And then ask yourself, what's one small, actionable step you can take today to support your memory and your cognitive health in the long run? Maybe it's adding some berries to your breakfast, taking a quick walk during your lunch break, or putting your phone away an hour earlier tonight. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. It all adds up.
All right. Well, that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.